Hello, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that I'm not there with you this last week before Christmas vacation because I am not feeling well. I am sick and I need to stay home so that I don't get anyone else sick. But I miss y'all and I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and I can't wait to see you back in January. Love y'all.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that this book that I'm about to read to you, The Carpenter's Gift, is in 2 parts. So there'll be 2 videos for you to watch. Isn't that right? Yes.
Hello, everybody. I am going to read a book to you called The Carpenter's Gift. This is the cover. Let me see if I can get it. There we go. No glare. I know we always talk about the title of a book and the cover, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what this book is about. I was going to read the inside flap for you, but I'm not going to do that because it gives away a lot of the what the book is about, and I just really want you to get the meaning as I'm reading it to you. And I'm going to show you the pictures. It is a picture book. It's a Christmas tale about the Rockefeller Center tree. And you'll also have a Google slide presentation that's got some videos in it that will give you information about the Rockefeller tree as well. Okay, here we go. Nearly a lifetime had passed, but Henry could still remember what it felt like to wake up in the old shack, especially during wintertime. In those days, the Great Depression gripped the country, and like many people, Henry's parents were out of work, and they could not afford coal for the stove or warm blankets for the beds. So young Henry usually woke up with a shiver, but he didn't complain because it was nobody's fault. Instead, he visited warm places in his mind. So this is old Henry writing about this, and this is young Henry. And I wish I was there in person to read this to you because the artwork is so beautiful to see in person. But it is what it is, right? One day in 1931, actually the day before Christmas, Henry was reading a book when he heard the loud toot-toot of a car horn. He opened the front door and saw his father behind the wheel of a borrowed truck. "Go for a ride, Sparky?" his father shouted over the rumbling engine. "You bet," Henry shouted back, and he raced inside to get his coat. Riding in any sort of a car was a special treat for Henry, not to be missed. And soon he was sitting beside his father, nose pressed on the window glass. So here's Henry. And here he is in the truck, excited about his ride. They drove to a nearby grove of evergreens. What's an evergreen? You guys know what that is, right? A tree? Okay. Henry breathed in the air strong and let's start again, shall we? Henry breathed in the strong, familiar smell. "Here's the plan," Henry's father said. "You see those spruce trees, Sparky? We're going to cut them down and take them into the city." "Why?" Henry asked. "To sell them as Christmas trees," his father said. Even though New York City was just an hour's drive away, Henry had never been there before. He shivered with excitement at the thought of seeing all those tall buildings scraping the sky. Hence the name skyscrapers, right? I hope I can get this whole thing in there. So here's Henry. There's his dad. They're loading up trees on the truck. Such a beautiful, beautiful book with beautiful artwork. When Henry and his father reached Midtown Manhattan, they began looking for a place to park and unload. Driving down Fifth Avenue, they found a good spot next to a construction site. "Mind if I set up here?" Henry's father asked a worker. The man looked them over. It didn't take him long to figure out that Henry's father was down on his luck. "No problem," the man said. "I'll give you a hand even. My name's Frank." And then he turned and called around, "Hey, Mikey, hey, Polly, help me out here." So here they are. Look at those huge buildings. So pretty. And then here they are getting some help from Polly and all the gang. For the rest of the afternoon, Henry and his father sold trees to passers-by. By the end of the day, they had earned enough money to make the trip a success. "We should be getting home now," Henry's father said as the sun sat behind a tall building. "But what about the rest of the trees?" Henry asked. "Well, I thought we'd give them to Frank and the other fellows." Henry nodded in agreement. "The best presents are the ones you don't expect," he thought. So here's Henry and all the other guys. Look at that beautiful tree. So pretty. Because it was Christmas Eve, the workers were having a little party. Frank and the others took the tallest of the trees and Henry and his father had given them, and they decorated it with whatever they could cobble together. Paper garlands, cranberries threaded onto string, and even a few shiny tin cans. Henry added an ornament of his own, made of newspaper that he folded into a star. In the background, he could hear his father talking to Frank and the other grown-ups about grown-up things, the hard times Henry's father and their family were having, the shack that in which they lived in. But Henry didn't want to think about all those things. He just wanted to look at the most marvelous Christmas tree he had ever seen. Who does that remind you of? He doesn't want to think about adult things. He just kind of wants to be a kid. Sound familiar? So here's his dad talking to the dudes, and look at him decorating the tree. It had been the best day that Henry could remember, and he didn't want it to end. He stood before the decorated tree, enchanted. The street lamps had just come on, and the tin cans glistened in their light. If ever there was a magic moment, Henry thought, this is it. He decided to make a Christmas wish. He wished that one day his family could live in a nice, warm house. And there's Henry with his paper star, which is actually the cover of the book. After making his wish, Henry opened his eyes. His gaze fell onto a pine cone lying on the ground. He picked it up and was running it over in his hands when he felt his father's grip on his shoulder. "Time to go, Sparky," his father said. Henry stuffed the pine cone into his pocket, said goodnight to the workers, and walked with his father back to the truck. So there's Henry with his pine cone. And look at that beautiful picture of them walking between all those tall buildings. Even back then in the 30s, there were really tall buildings. By the time they arrived home, it was well past Henry's bedtime. "You must be exhausted," his mother said, slipping off his boots. "Straight to bed with you." Struggling off his coat, Henry felt a bulge in his pocket. It was the pine cone. He took it out and looked at it, remembering the joys of the day and the magic of the tree. The next morning, Henry's parents let him sleep late. In fact, it was well past 8 o'clock when the toot-toot of several car horns woke him up. Rushing to the window, he saw 3 trucks pulling up outside. All were loaded with lumber and other building supplies. At the wheel of the truck was Frank, and behind him were the other Rockefeller Center workers. What were they doing so far from the city on Christmas morning? What do you think they're doing there? Why would Frank and all the other workers come to Henry's house an hour away from New York City? There he is looking out the window in amazement. And here's all the other vehicles. And this is a pretty good picture of Henry's house. It's kind of a shack, really. Frank got out of the truck. "After you left, we got to thinking," he said. "There was all this extra wood lying around, and we had the day off, so we thought we'd drive up and see what we could do to help you with this house of yours." Frank looked looked the shack over, taking in its patched walls and ill-fitting windows. "I think we'll have to make a fresh start," he said. Henry's father didn't have words for the way he felt, so he simply took Frank's hand and shook it. Here, I'm going to try to get all of it in there. The sound of sawing and hammering traveled far enough that Christmas morning for Henry's neighbors to wonder what in the world was going on. A few walked over, saw the new house going up, and spread the word, and by mid-afternoon, a dozen more people were pitching in. As the new house took shape, Frank called Henry over. "You see those boards?" he said, pointing to the stack of cedar. "We're going to use those to trim out the windows, but they've got nails in them. I need you to pull the nails out." Henry moved to fetch the boards, but Frank called him back, digging into his toolbox. He handed Henry an old claw hammer. "You'll be needing this," Frank said. By nightfall, the frame of the new house was nearly done. By week's end, it had a roof, and soon enough, it was ready for Henry and his family to move in. So there's the house going up. And there's Frank giving Henry the hammer. In the spring, Henry's parents celebrated with a potluck dinner, and they invited everyone who had helped build the house. Henry was glad to see Frank again. He was ready to return the claw hammer, but Frank wouldn't take it. "You keep it, son," he said. "It may come in handy someday." After dinner, Henry sat happily in his very own room. He thought about his Christmas wish and couldn't believe it had actually come true. He knew that he should do something special to express how thankful he was, and he thought long and hard about what that might be. And finally, he decided to plant the pine cone. Maybe he could be Jack from the Beanstalk story, and the pine cone could be his magic bean. So here's Henry, sitting in his room. And there's Frank when Henry's trying to give him back the claw hammer. Make sure you watch part 2 of the video to get the rest of the story.